It was supposed to be a simple assignment. A quick drive, a giant pumpkin, a small village, a few photos for a newspaper article. That was all. But by the end of the day, one mother would be driving through hell itself, trying to save her daughter from a place that should never have existed. And the worst part? She wouldn't even realize she had already lost her child. Stay with me, because what happened in that village still doesn't make sense to me. And once you hear it, it won't make sense to you either.
The old Lotta bounced along a quiet country road outside the city. It was a bright September morning. The sun was warm, the sky was clear, and the trees along the roadside still glowed with yellow leaves. Behind the wheel sat Julia Morosova, a reporter for the city newspaper. At work, she'd been handed what seemed like a harmless task: write a story about a record-breaking pumpkin grown by a local woman at her summer cottage. The woman had emailed the paper herself, attaching a photo of the giant vegetable. Julia almost laughed when she got the assignment. A giant pumpkin. That was her big story. She'd gone through journalism school for this. In the back seat sat her 6-year-old daughter, Marina. Curly, wheat-colored hair, restless eyes, endless energy. The child had been talking non-stop since they left home. That, of course, was the first problem. Julia's mother had fallen ill at the worst possible time. The kindergarten was closed for Sunday. The friend Marina sometimes stayed with had gone away with her parents, so Julia had no choice but to bring her daughter along. Unprofessional, annoying, and she'd later realize the single decision that changed everything.
"Mom, is the village big?" Marina asked. "I don't know, Bunny. I've never been there," Julia muttered, already feeling the first sting of a headache. "And the pumpkin? Is it really huge?" Julia glanced at her in the mirror. "Very huge. You'll see." A road sign appeared. Black Hollow. Marina sounded it out and frowned. What does Black Hollow mean? Julia gave a tired smile. Honestly, I don't even want to think about it. She had no idea how right she was. The asphalt gave way to dirt, and the car began to shake over potholes. Julia slowed, silently thanking the weather for staying dry all week. If it had rained, they might have gotten stuck out here, and stuck was the last thing she wanted to be in a place like this. Marina started complaining that she was thirsty. Julia searched the seats, the doors, the glove compartment. No bottle, of course. She promised they'd stop soon. And then, just before the village entrance, she saw a small rural shop on the left side of the road. The little store looked worse the closer she got. Its brick walls were stained dark with age and damp, and the blue sign above the door had faded almost to gray. The barred window reflected her headlights back at her like a dead eye. Around the entrance, the air felt strangely still, as if even the wind didn't want to come near the place.
3 men sat on a bench against the wall, half asleep, half drunk, faces red and swollen from sun and alcohol. A woman sat on the steps and didn't move when Julia parked, only lifted her eyes slowly, as if she'd been waiting for them specifically. There was something in the way they all stared without speaking. Not curiosity, not friendliness, something closer to appraisal. Julia suddenly felt exposed. The road behind her was empty. The village around her was quiet in that unnatural way some places get, when some animal part of your brain tells you that you've stepped into the wrong world. Marina, for once, had gone quiet too. That silence unsettled Julia more than any noise could have. She took her daughter's hand and walked inside anyway. She had a job to do. The saleswoman, heavyset, in a uniform, looked up from her crossword with obvious irritation. "We don't come in with children," she said flatly. Julia blinked. Then, deciding not to argue, she asked for children's water instead. "We don't sell children's products. We don't come in with children." Julia stared, stunned, then asked for juice, apple or orange. The woman pointed at the shelf without another word.
Outside, the locals were still watching. Julia buckled Marina in, locked the doors, and let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "How do I open it?" Marina asked, holding up the juice. Julia had nothing to cut the corner with. "We're almost there. We'll ask for a cup at the house." "But I want it now." "I know. Just wait a little longer." If only she'd known how little a little longer would come to mean. The village stretched farther than expected.
It took a while to find house number 36, and when she did, it looked almost too perfect. A neat little cottage, painted white and blue, carved window frames, a fresh roof, smoke curling from the chimney, a blue wooden gate. But standing in that yard, camera in hand, Julia had the strange sensation that something was off in the air itself. The warmth of the afternoon seemed to thin at the edges. The flowers were bright but somehow lifeless, as if arranged rather than grown. Even the smoke from the chimney looked too neat, too steady, like a decoration rather than smoke. And the old woman who came out to greet them never stopped smiling. Not a warm smile, not a grandmotherly one. The kind that stays fixed a little too long, like something practiced in a mirror.
Julia told herself she was overthinking it. The woman was gray-haired, cheerful, dressed in a worn sundress with rubber boots, chattering about her garden the whole walk through the yard. Purple asters, chrysanthemums, marigolds still bloomed around the house, though most of the beds had already been cleared for winter. Then, in the backyard, the pumpkin. Huge. Even Marina forgot her thirst and stared in awe. "I could fit inside it," she whispered. The old woman's smile sharpened, just slightly. "Yes, it's just the right size for you." Julia photographed the pumpkin, the hostess, Marina beside it, and didn't notice in that moment how quickly her daughter had stopped complaining about anything at all. Inside, the house swallowed sound the way old houses shouldn't. Marina's footsteps, the scrape of chairs, the clink of cups, all of it felt muffled, absorbed by the walls. The warmth was almost oppressive, and the air carried a faint, sweet smell Julia couldn't place. Floral, maybe, or medicinal. She didn't like it. She couldn't see why, but every instinct in her body was telling her, don't sit down, don't eat, don't close your eyes. She sat down anyway. She ate anyway. Marina devoured the pumpkin pie, the buns, the candy, the homemade strawberry jam the old woman had brought out. Julia only picked at hers out of politeness, but the heat in the house was making her sleepy, her body strangely heavy, as though gravity itself had thickened.
The hostess noticed. "You can lie down for a bit if you want. There's a comfortable sofa in the guest room." Then, almost as an afterthought, "And I can show your daughter my granddaughter's toys upstairs." Marina jumped up immediately. Julia, too tired to argue, agreed. It was the last decision she'd make with a clear head for a long time. The old woman led her to a tiny, windowless room. "I'll wake you in half an hour," she said. Julia barely managed to thank her before sleep swallowed her whole. When she woke, the silence was so complete it felt physical. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The room was dark, not naturally dark, but dark in a way that made the corners feel deeper than they should. Her head throbbed, her mouth was dry, her limbs felt as though she'd been sleeping underwater. She sat up slowly and listened. Nothing. No Marina, no voices, no movement anywhere in the house. That was the first thing that frightened her. The second was the feeling that the room itself had changed while she slept. Subtle, almost impossible to prove, but the air was colder than before, and the silence beyond the door felt thick, as if something were waiting just on the other side of it. She opened the door carefully, expecting to hear the old woman's voice, the clink of dishes. Instead, the hallway stretched out dim and empty, longer than she remembered it being.
The house no longer felt cozy. It felt abandoned. And yet she had the horrible sense that she was not alone in it. She found the old woman outside, sitting with a newspaper as though nothing at all had happened. "You woke up," the hostess said. "You were out cold." Julia rubbed her forehead. "I think I should go." "Of course, I'll walk you out." At the car, the old woman smiled and waved. Julia started the engine, glanced in the rearview mirror, and froze. The back seat was empty. A strange emptiness opened in her chest. Then, just as quickly, she told herself she must be confused, tired, overthinking. She drove back toward the shop, feeling like she'd forgotten something important. At the store, she bought cola
and noticed a juice carton on the floor by the back seat that she didn't remember buying. She drank from it anyway. Then she reached for her phone. Gone. Coat pocket, bag, glove compartment, floor, nothing. No phone, no photos, no idea what had happened. She turned the car around and drove back to the house. What she found there hit her like a physical blow. The neat blue and white cottage was gone. In its place stood a rotten, collapsing house behind a crooked fence that leaned at an angle like broken teeth. The roof had caved in on itself. The windows were black and blind, boarded in places, as if the house had been staring at her the whole time and only now let her see it. The yard, choked with weeds taller than a person. The air smelled damp and sour, like something long buried had just been pulled back up into daylight.
Julia stood frozen, trying to force her mind to reject what she was seeing. This was impossible. This was not the same place, and yet it was. The most terrifying part wasn't the house. It was how quickly her own certainty began to crumble, her memory slipping through her fingers like sand, the blue and white cottage growing more distant with every second, as if it had belonged to someone else's life and not hers. That was when the real fear settled in. Not fear of the house, fear of her own mind. She climbed the gate, tearing her hand on rusted metal, and pushed toward the porch. No pumpkin, no flowers, no tidy beds, only weeds and wild raspberry canes gone feral. Wedged between the porch steps, she found something small and blue, a toy pony, Marina's toy pony. Her stomach dropped through the floor of the world. She stuffed it in her pocket and ran for help. No one answered at the neighboring houses. At the last one, an old woman finally came out, asked why Julia was making such a racket, and the moment Julia mentioned the house, the woman crossed herself, whispered something under her breath, and slammed the door. That told Julia everything, and nothing at all.
Back at the shop, a woman with greasy hair and a wrinkled face stepped outside and asked, "Where's the little girl who was with you this morning?" Julia said she didn't know what she meant. The woman grabbed her arm. "Were you at plot 36? "Yes." The woman's face changed. She said that if Julia drove away now, she would lose her daughter forever. Then she said the little girl had been holding a blue horse. Julia pulled the pony from her pocket. The woman nodded grimly and told her the story. Years ago, a woman named Masha had lived in that village. Lonely, strange, dressed always in black. The locals called her a witch. Some said she'd slept with half the village, others that she simply wanted a child she couldn't have. Then, one day she got pregnant. The village women hated her for it. They went to her house. No one ever admitted exactly what happened there. But Masha died, and they buried her somewhere on that plot.
After that, children started disappearing. Not all at once, one by one, every September. And each time, the mothers wouldn't even realize their child was gone until a full day had passed, as if their memories had been tampered with on purpose.
There was only one way to break it, the woman said. Vodka. Julia almost laughed until she realized the woman wasn't joking. So she bought vodka, cups, pickles, and the two of them went back to the cursed plot and drank on the porch. Nothing happened. They drank more. The witch, apparently, had never specified exactly how much was needed. Julia, half-drunk and furious, accused the woman of making it all up. The woman snapped back that she didn't need Julia's pity or her vodka. Julia stood, staggered around the side of the house, and when she came back, the porch was empty. No woman, no bottle, no food. Only an open door where there hadn't been one before. She stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind her, and it was daylight again. The living room was back. Cable, white cloth, pie, jam, but ruined. The pie sat with a deep dent punched through its crust. Buns scattered across the floor.
Jam spilled into a dark, spreading stain like old blood. A broken blue cup lay shattered under the bench.
The rooms beyond it were wrong. Too many of them. Too many doors, endless and dusty, seeming to repeat themselves no matter which way she turned. In one bedroom, a woman stood in the doorway. Young, beautiful, terrifying. Black hair hanging like snakes around her shoulders, skin pale as candle wax, eyes red and feverish.
"Masha," Julia whispered. The woman laughed, and Julia's vision shattered into pieces. A baby in a crib. Women beating someone against a table. Jam spilling across white cloth. A child crying somewhere deep in the walls. A little girl eating pie beside a blue pony. And then, all at once, Marina's name came rushing back to her, as if it had been stolen and only just returned. Julia gasped and stumbled. The witch smiled. She said she was sorry. She hadn't known Julia had a child. She said those women had been punished for what they did to her. She said she only took children from mothers who were burdened by them. Julia said she loved her daughter more than anything in the world. "Then find her," the witch said. "You have until dawn." And she was gone. Julia searched every room. The house was bigger inside than it had any right to be. Endless rooms, some with beds, some with tables, some empty, all of them looping back to the same living room like a maze with no center. No Marina. Outside, the sky had begun turning gray in the east, and the yard was full of pumpkins. Dozens of them. Big ones, small ones, round, oval, scattered across a yard where there should have been nothing but weeds. She grabbed the axe from the woodpile and swung it into the nearest one. It split with a wet, hollow crack, and for a second she thought she'd imagined the movement inside. Then she saw the shape curled at its center, and her whole body went cold. A little girl. So still, Julia mistook her for a doll. Then the child moved, a tiny twitch of the fingers, a faint turn of the head, and Julia understood with a wave of nausea that this pumpkin had never been growing fruit at all. It had been growing children. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the axe. All around her, the yard was full of the same yellow shapes, each one hiding something impossible. The air smelled of wet earth and rot, and underneath it, something sweet.
Worst of all was the sound. Not screaming, not crying, just the soft, wet crack of pumpkin flesh splitting open, again and again. "Who are you?" the first girl asked when she opened her eyes. "I'm Varya," she said. "Where's my mom?" Julia promised to find her and moved to the next pumpkin, and the next. Some held only bones and rotted clothing. Some held children still crying. Some sat silent, staring at nothing. All of them trapped. None of them Marina. The sky turned pink, then red. Dawn was coming, and Julia fell to her knees in the wet grass, the children gathering around her in a pale, fading half-circle. Then one of the older girls pointed toward the far corner of the yard, to one last pumpkin, half hidden in the bushes. Julia ran to it and swung the axe with everything she had left. And there she was, Marina, alive. Julia broke completely, pulling her daughter into her arms. Marina blinked up at her, dazed, as if waking from a very deep sleep, with no memory at all of where she'd been. Back at the car, Julia laid Marina across the back seat, opened the trunk, and pulled out a canister of gasoline she always kept for emergencies. Then she walked back toward the house one last time.
The ghost children stood among the broken pumpkin shells, growing fainter as the light rose around them. Julia smiled at them, weak and hollow, and raised a hand. Then she poured the gasoline over the walls. "Masha," she whispered, "come out." No answer. She lit it anyway. The flames caught instantly, racing up the dry wood, and within minutes the whole house was burning behind her as she ran back to the car. She looked at Marina, asleep in the back seat, and drove. At the last moment, in the mirror, she thought she saw a pale face in an upstairs window, black hair, a wide, mad smile. When she looked again, it was gone. The road unspooled ahead of her, dark and empty, and she didn't stop. Streetlights, a gas station, closed. A sign for the city, growing closer with every kilometer. She didn't stop driving until she reached the city. She told herself that anyway. She would keep telling herself that for a long time. That evening, a drunk group, 3 men and a woman with greasy hair, wandered up to an old Lada parked by the roadside, just outside Black Hollow. One of the men pulled the door open. "Key should be in the glove box." "Yeah," Larissa muttered, lighting a cigarette. "She probably left it there." He found the key and slid into the driver's seat, glancing at the back, at the child's car seat, still buckled, still empty. He didn't think anything of it. He never did. "I'll take this heap to Sanyich. You two check the plot for anything left behind." Larissa looked toward the house, not burned, not ruined, just the same rotten, boarded-up shell it had always been, standing exactly where it always stood, and crossed herself. "I'm not going in there." The other 2 climbed the gate anyway and vanished into the yard. 15 minutes later, they came back empty-handed. "Clean," one said. "Same as always," said the other.
Larissa crossed herself once more and looked down the road toward the city, toward the streetlights Julia swore she'd driven past, the gas station she swore had been closed, the sign that swore the distance was closing. None of it had ever moved. It never did. "Well then," Larissa said, lighting another cigarette, "to the store?" And the 4 of them wandered off toward the shop, chatting casually, as if nothing in that yard had ever happened at all, as if a woman named Julia weren't still driving, somewhere just past the tree line, still certain she was almost home, still glancing in the mirror at a daughter who would not wake up until September came around again.
Some stories end when the video does. This one doesn't. Subscribe. I've got more places you shouldn't visit.